Hey there, my name is Tay, and today I'm going to talk to you about attachment theory explained through the senses, part two. Now, my first video on this subject, I talked to you about the importance of eye contact and touch in creating a bond with your child and how that may impact the development of your child moving forward. Now, in this video, I'm going to take a couple more senses, and I think one of the senses I'm going to leave out at this point would be smell. And the only thing that I can think of with that, I know that there's an aspect of attachment, but I think it goes along more with body memory and subconscious memory. But I will say this, that if you're having your child go to childcare or daycare, maybe having their blankie or something that covers them with your smell on them, because while you're away, they can actually smell you and they remember your smell. It becomes very lodged into their primal part of their brain, which is a great, great aspect of connecting. Okay. All right, so the other sense that I want to talk to you about is voice. And when I'm saying voice I'm basically saying in a very encompassing way, because I'm talking about tone as well as language. And to demonstrate this, I have my beautiful little baby doll named Bella. She's back with me. All right, so we take tone and voice. Now, tone could be many things, but obviously what I'm talking about is not that really aggressive or that jutting or that very harsh type of tone when you're connecting with your baby. Now, if you notice that a lot of people, when you have your baby and your infant, you're doing a lot of rocking and you're doing a lot of, maybe melodic talking and, rhythmic singing to them. And that's a great way to connect with your baby, obviously. And the other aspect is language, and language is also another imperative aspect to your child's development. And language is basically the foundation for early childhood education. So they've been looking at this for many, many years. Now, what they found out with language is that with kids, they've studied kids coming from a more affluent neighborhood compared to kids coming from a lower economic status neighborhood. And what they found is, kids oftentimes coming from the more affluent neighborhoods, they actually have a, greater learning capabilities and language capacity. And, compared to the kids coming from a lower socioeconomic background. And what's interesting about that is that in the field of psychology and attachment, when I'm languaging with my child, and what I mean by that is basically when I'm reading to my child and I'm speaking to my child, I am actually connecting with my child. And when I'm connecting with my child, that means that their brain gets more and more developed, right? And when I'm reading to my child and speaking to my child, that means that their brain will start to create more and more connections and more pathways. So their brains will start to flourish. Okay. So, with language, what's interesting about the study between the affluent and the lower socioeconomic aspect is that, people say, well, yeah, of course, language is, I read to my kids and I talk to my kids. And, what's interesting about that is that a lot of times with the lower socioeconomic background is that the language could be a lot more limited. And I think the reason, there's many, many layers to this, but I think one of the reasons is because oftentimes people are so stressed out about survival needs, right? How am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to, get the lights on or keep the lights on, put food on the table? And in that aspect, it'd be obviously very overwhelming on a daily basis. And what happens a lot of times with that is that our language gets more and more diminished because we use less language. And so as a parent, if I'm worried about just my basic survival needs, most likely what's going to happen is that when my child, develops and gets older, that I'm going to be more concerned with them, telling them, don't do that, stop doing that, please sit down, don't do this, read your book, go, study your homework, but I'm not actively part of that equation. And so what happens with that is that if I'm focused on, the don'ts and the stop it's and you can't, then their language becomes smaller and smaller also. So one of the ways that you can actually help your child develop, regardless of what your economic background is actually taking time to engage your child in conversation. Open-ended questions, or talking to them about what they're thinking, and engaging, I don't know, any conversation like around a banana or something. The color of the banana, the texture, and whatever that is. And so what they found out is that once parents started engaging their children in language and conversations, then that increased their language capacity as well as their learning capacity. And by what I mean by language is that increased their word capacity, which will increase their learning capacity as they get older. Okay. Now I know that that's just one example, and I know that there are many, many layers to this equation, but that's one thing that we can take care of directly in our own home with our own connection with our child. Okay. All right, so reading to your child, conversing with your child is going to be a leeway to being present with your child. And being present is, again, being right here with Bella now. And I say this, being present. Now I know no one can be 100% present 100% of the time. Like, I know that's impossible. In the field of attachment, it's more about being consistent rather than inconsistent. So I'm consistently present versus inconsistently present. Okay? And it's not about being consistently not present either. It's about being consistently present versus inconsistently present. So what I mean by that is that, okay, so I'm holding Bella, I'm here physically, but I'm not here energetically, meaning I'm not all the way here energetically. So I could be holding Bella, let's say I'm dealing with some type of depression. Okay, if I'm dealing with depression, then most likely my oxytocin levels will be lowered, and I talked about that in the first video. If my oxytocin levels are lowered, then my likelihood to connect with Bella is going to be a lot less than if my oxytocin levels were up. And if I'm going to connect less, then most likely I'm not going to have a lot of eye contact with her. And if I'm dealing with depression, right, before and after giving birth, and maybe I'm despondent, maybe I'm over here, and although I'm holding her, that my face becomes very expressionless. There's no other expression on my face. And this actually coincides with getting the Botox and the brow lift, right? Because these kind of shut off our mirror neurons. And if I'm depressed, then that does the same thing, right? And if I'm depressed, then I'm going to be disconnected from Bella, and she's going to pick up on that. Now, the other aspect with this, too, is that if I am, depressed and I have no affect, no expression on my face, what happens with that is that Bella will learn this. She can learn this. So not only could I, pass on lower levels of oxytocin to her, but I'm also not creating oxytocin with her because I'm not connecting with her. Then she also sees my, lifeless face or expressionless face, and then she can pick up on that, right? So, and that's how depression can be carried over, right? So it's not always just a genetic component. There could be a genetic component also, but also an environmental, meaning a nurturing component to that too. Now, being present, that could be anything. I could be depressed. I could be anxious. I could be using substances. I could be, popping pills. I could be drinking, wine. So even if I'm here, right, I'm not, energetically present. And again, right, I'm not talking about having like 2 or 3 glasses of wine, maybe, once a month or, once every 5 months or something like that. I'm talking about having, those glasses of wine on a consistent basis to where I'm not energetically present. And you can put anything into it. You can put work, you can put whatever kind of takes you away on a consistent basis. And that's again what we're talking about. So about being energetically present. Okay. All right. So those are the aspects that I just kind of wanted to touch upon you as far as creating a connection with your child. And I hope you, as always, I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you come back and look at the other videos that I'm going to talk about, which will be the 4 attachment styles and how they look and how they may show up in relationships. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.